The night had settled over the Arizona plains like a thick, velvet blanket, deepening every shadow, sharpening every sound, and forcing even the bravest to keep their hand close to their holster. But shy young rancher Eli Dawson had never been much of a gunslinger. He preferred the soft murmur of cattle and the gentle rhythm of fence posts to the chaos of saloons or gunfights. So when three towering silhouettes stepped out from the moonlit ridge and blocked his path home, he felt his breath slip right out of him like a spooked horse. These were not ordinary figures, they were Apache women, each standing taller than any men he had ever seen, built not like monsters but like warriors carved out of canyon rock, strong-shouldered, long-limbed, graceful in their enormity, and at the front of them was the one he had encountered before, the giant Apache girl with storm-dark eyes, braided hair cascading like a river down her back, and a steady expression that always seemed to study him deeper than he could stand. Her name was Taya, and tonight she stepped closer than she ever had, so close Eli could feel the ground tremble faintly with each footfall. "You can cover for the three of us tonight," she murmured, and her voice wasn't loud but it carried the weight of a thundercloud. Eli swallowed hard because he had no idea what she meant, though judging by the way Taya rested one hand on the hilt of her long knife and the other women scanned the darkness behind her, it wasn't a request, something dangerous was out there. Eli stammered, "See cover." "For what?" And Taya lowered her head just enough to meet his eyes, a gesture that somehow made her seem even more enormous, but there was no threat there, only urgency. She explained that a band of bounty hunters, armed with rifles and hatred, had crossed Apache land earlier that day, hunting her small trio for reasons she never chose to reveal, but Eli knew the region well enough to guess. Ever since the railroad men began laying track, tension between settlers and the Apache had turned wildfire hot, and bounty hunters didn't need much of a reason to start trouble. Taya said the hunters were close, too close, and tonight, she needed Eli's ranch, his barn, his land, his quiet, overlooked valley, as a hiding place for her and her sisters. The thought made Eli's stomach twist. If anyone caught him sheltering Apache, let alone three giant Apache women, his ranch could be burned to ash by dawn. But Taya, towering and steady, stepped close enough that her shadow swallowed him whole, whispering, "You helped me once before. I trust you. Tonight, trust me." And though his heart hammered like a runaway stallion, Eli nodded, because something in her tone wasn't command, but faith. They moved quickly through the dark, ducking low under the scattered cottonwoods until the ranch house lantern flickered into view. Eli tried to quiet his nerves by reminding himself that no one ever visited him this late. He lived alone, had few friends, and fewer visitors, so hiding the Apache women might actually be possible. But as soon as he opened the barn door and ushered Taya and her sisters inside, thunder exploded across the plains, not real thunder, but rifle fire. The bounty hunters had spotted movement. Eli barely had time to throw the barn doors closed before bullets punched splinters off the wood behind him. Taya grabbed his wrist, not painfully, but firmly, grounding him, and pulled him deeper into the barn's shadow. "Stay behind me," she whispered, planting herself like a fortress between him and danger. The hunter shouted from outside, accusing Eli of harboring Apache, threatening to drag him out and string him up as punishment if he didn't surrender the women. Eli trembled. He'd never been brave, never stood up to armed men, never had a reason to, but when he looked at Taya, tall, fierce, protective, something inside him hardened. Maybe bravery wasn't something a man was born with, maybe it was something that arrived the moment someone else needed him. He whispered back, "They'll kill you." Taya lowered her chin in a rare moment of softness. "Then let them try." Her two sisters, taller and equally imposing, positioned themselves on either side, but Eli shook his head. He knew this land, this barn, the ridges behind it, he could use that. Quietly, he slipped behind a stack of hay bales and pushed open a hidden back hatch, usually used for moving cattle feed. "This way," he breathed. Taya eyed him curiously at first, but when more gunfire erupted, she gave a short nod and motioned for her sisters to follow. The four of them crawled out and moved behind the barn, just as the hunters kicked down the main doors and stormed in, shouting, cursing, unaware that their targets had slipped into darkness. Eli led the women toward the canyon trail behind his ranch, but one hunter spotted movement and fired. The bullet grazed Eli's arm, sending him stumbling. Taya reacted instantly, faster than Eli had ever seen, sweeping him behind her massive frame while she picked up a stone the size of a saddlebag and hurled it downhill with force that stunned even her sisters. The stone slammed into the hunter's horse, scattering the riders long enough for Eli to regain his footing. "Keep moving," Taya urged, but when they reached the canyon pass, Eli realized the hunters had predicted their escape route. They were already positioned on the ridge above, rifles aimed. Taya's sisters drew their long spears, ready to fight to the death, but Eli stepped forward, arm bleeding, breath shaking, and shouted up toward the ridge, "These women haven't hurt a soul. You want someone to blame, blame the railroad. Blame the men who stole your pay. But don't punish the innocent." The hunters hesitated, clearly stunned that a rancher, a quiet, scrawny rancher at that, stood defending Apache warriors. Taya glanced at him with an expression he'd never seen before, respect deep enough to move mountains. But the hunters began raising their rifles again, until Taya stepped forward, lifted her chin, and said, voice echoing like deep canyon wind, "If you want blood, you'll take mine first." The hunters paused. Even they knew killing a woman, an unarmed giant woman at that, would stain their reputation, and more importantly, the gunfire they'd already unleashed was echoing into the valley, carrying toward nearby settlements. Lights were beginning to flick on far below. People would come investigate. Witnesses would come. And bounty hunters didn't like witnesses. Slowly, reluctantly, they retreated, cursing, spitting, promising they'd return, but for tonight, they disappeared into the darkness. The valley fell still again. Eli, shaking from adrenaline, collapsed against the canyon wall. Taya knelt, well, half knelt, because even kneeling she was taller than he was, and pressed her hand to his wound, tying it with a strip of cloth torn from her own clothing. "You were brave," she said, and her voice had warmth he'd never heard from her before. Eli whispered, "I was terrified." She smiled softly. "Bravery isn't about fear. It's about choosing someone else anyway." Her sisters bowed their heads to him, murmuring thanks in their language, and Taya stood tall beneath the moon, silhouetted like a deity carved from night. "Someday," she said, "we will repay you." Eli shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." But Taya stepped closer, lifting his chin with a fingertip as gentle as a feather despite its strength. "We owe you more than you know." And then, before disappearing into the canyon shadows with her sisters, she turned once more and said, "Eli Dawson, the plains remember men like you." As he watched them vanish into the desert night, Eli felt the strangest swell of pride in his chest, something he'd never felt before, and he knew that whatever stories people told tomorrow, whatever rumors spread, he would never regret standing up for them. Some nights change a man forever. Some nights reveal who he really is. And this night, this wild, dangerous, moonlit night, would become legend. And if you enjoyed this story and want more Wild West adventures, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring even more powerful stories to life every single day.